So actually, we have a kind of similar path. How you moved from the SAP to the farming? What was your motivation to do it?
Well, my career, it's a long story, but I had a really good career at Bayer. And while I was at Bayer, like Bayer, AG, and
Yes, yes.
Leverkusen, German,
Uh-huh.
I was their head of quality and innovation. And
Uh-huh.
in early 2000, we started migrating towards SAP for all the businesses worldwide.
Yes, yes.
So they asked me to be in charge of the quality modules and the quality implementation for quality systems for SAP. And it was a very challenging 2.5 years.
Yeah, I could imagine.
Yeah.
Actually, the SAP projects, especially in the large companies, could be quite demanding.
Yeah, it was 14-hour days for, I'd say, 2.5 years, but we got it done. And the project that I led was, it started rocky, but it was very successful at the end. It did very well.
Yeah, super. Nice to hear that. And looking further, when I was looking into what you done, actually, you spent some time collaborating or was involved with NASA and AAC, research in terms of these green technologies, or what could it little? I understand maybe this is you have some strong NDAs with them, but maybe you could share at least.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little background. I was an intern and I didn't know what I was going to pursue. I had a lot of interest, but I was always very interested in the environment. I even thought about going into environmental engineering. I did a little internship at Stennis Space Center, and they had a group there working on bioregenerative life support systems for advanced manned space flight. They actually had a moon base they were building that would house 4 astronauts. So in 1992, when I was still in college, I went to see it and they said, "Hey, what do you want to know? Because our funding has been discontinued. Too expensive. No more space exploration. It's over." So they were very open and to share everything. So I got to actually work on the moon base that they were building for space travel. They were going to put 4 astronauts on a lunar colony. But since their budget was cut, that was my introduction to hydroponics. So I had read a lot about it, but I'd never done anything. So they were actually using plants to clean air, clean water, and grow food that they would need for these. 3 years later, I was working for Bayer. And at Bayer, I convinced the higher ups to let me build a greenhouse and a chemical plant to treat industrial wastewater. And they thought it was crazy. So I actually hired some of those same NASA scientists. Some of them were retired. Some of them were consulting. Some of them working at Los Alamos and other places. I hired some of them to consult in my project at Bayer. And anyway, after it worked very well. So we were cleaning some really nasty industrial wastewater and with plants. It was a modified constructed wetland, essentially.
Yes. Yeah. No. I know these techniques. We calling it urban permaculture.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in which year it was? It was like really
in the mid 90s, 96.
96.
It was. The articles were written. I have some publications on it. It was like everybody was shocked how clean the water was. But that launched my career at Bayer. So at Bayer, that next thing you know, a few years later, I'm their head of quality, and then their head of quality and innovation. And since then, I was doing projects with fuel cells and solar and energy recovery, CO2 absorption. In 2006, I tried to get Bayer to invest in a tiny little company that I was good friends with called Tesla in San Carlos. And they didn't do it. And Tesla, this was before Elon Musk was the CEO. It was Martin Eberhard was the CEO. But I just thought they had so much going, and if they could survive, they could really transform the world. So I was trying to get Bayer to be more involved with that, and they chose not to. But I've been doing sustainable technologies my whole life. And so ironically, in 2015, and Sergej, I knew nothing about the food industry until my wife had celiac disease. She was diagnosed in 2006 with celiac right after our kids were born. That got me interested in the food industry. So in Houston, I left Bayer, became an entrepreneur to pursue my green ambitions, and started a restaurant chain in Houston for her. Did really well. But that's how I started learning more about food and food waste, and the need for hydroponic farming, the need for sustainable city farming. It became that it was an extremely inefficient model for agriculture, and that's when I decided to really focus on that. And ironically, my colleagues at NASA called me in 2015, and they said, "Hey, we're going back to the moon." We're going back. So by 2025, we expect to have a lunar colony. Would you be interested in helping? I said, yes, of course. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing now in Houston.
Super, amazing. No, hello, Houston. No, it's the funny because yesterday I talked with my colleague. Actually, he was my ex-student, then my ex-assistant. Now he's the lecturer on the university. And he say, once you will actually bring the container to the moon and grow the food there. And today I'm talking with you about actually first hand about growing food in special environment. Yeah.
And next week I have my NASA colleagues and some university colleagues from Texas A&M. They're visiting our farm and our greenhouse. So next Friday they'll be meeting me at the farm to discuss a project that we're going to collaborate on.
Super. Yeah. And actually, it's very cool. You already mentioned that actually you started this green restaurant because of the health issues of your wife, and I could tell you that we are really trying here in Croatia to push this concept. So, for example, for me also, like when we start to grow, we were more like, and we are still technology company, and then actually microgreens were like simple to grow, but for us they were very, very cool to experiment because we had really short cycles of the times for the experiment. So instead of waiting the 4 weeks for lettuce or some herbs, in a 1 week we could actually get the feedback and results of the system, automatization, and everything. But even that, and that time, I could tell that I fight with kind of cognitive dissonance when at one side it was so simple, but then the other side it was the one of the best food, in terms of nutrients, value, and everything. And now even a colleague of ours, she's finishing her PhD in a nutrient value of the microgreens, and the results are so promising. And actually, they could be used. We have some customers who are using it purposely for the health related issues as a food.
And we're actually doing research with MD Anderson here in Houston on microgreens.
Really?
And also with NASA. I have an article from NASA where they actually tested them. They will be eating a lot of microgreens in space. And very specific ones.
No, because especially because you could actually select, if you have good technology, you could select the good things. And actually, I put back in the days one slide which I used to show on the presentation, like deadly sins of the food industry. And one of the deadly sins was that actually instead of kilograms or pounds, we have to look on nutrient value of the plants.
Correct.
And now what I just discussed today with the colleague, that actually we have to look how much money we spent on the food, but actually we have to change it and to look how much minimum of the money we have to spend to get enough nutrients we need to survive.
Yes, yeah. And Sergey, the other thing that I learned from MD Anderson, my colleagues there, I was surprised. I didn't realize how bad it was. They said, well, the average distance in the US is 1,600 miles to get anything from a farm to your plate. And now because of drought and climate change, they think it's going to be 1,900 miles before the end of next year, because they have to import it from mostly Latin America. So the problem with that is such a long distance for transportation. And MD Anderson said, as soon as you harvest something, it starts to die immediately, and the nutritional load starts to diminish. On average, it's about 8 to 10% per day.
8%.
So 8 to 10% per day, depending on the crop. And they said you might only be getting 50% or maybe even less than 20% of the nutritional value. So, for example, you might think you're going to get this much vitamin C. You're only getting a fraction of it. So that's why the need for like local farming and also microgreens, because it has so much more, is so important right now.
Yeah. Actually, here we're coming to the another thing, because I saw what did you like on LinkedIn, and actually I really like this infographics about the food hubs and short food supply chain, and how actually what is happening there. Because when we started the company back in the day 3-4 years ago, first what we built actually software for the covering the whole processes of let's say farmers cooperative for the short food supply chain in Croatia. And actually for me it was very interesting model, and it was as I used to run the SAP, I used to run the big data lab, working with the SAP technology. And in that time we SAP put this SAP cloud infrastructure, and actually we wanted to do experiment. Can we put the SAP on the level of the small farmers? And actually this is how it started. And actually I was blown away when I get into mapping those processes, how they are organized, how it works. And I think it's how you look on this short food supply chain and what's happening in US in overall, because I know you have these food deserts and
yes. Right now, we're getting a lot of. We're going to be working with the city of Houston on actually building multiple greenhouses inside the city. That way, these food deserts, and typically, it's a food desert is a very underserved neighborhood, a poor neighborhood.
Yes.
So we're looking at not just improving economic activity, but taking care of the food issue by teaching them how to grow their own food year round. No, don't worry about rain or freezes or anything. But we're going to build greenhouses in those communities so they can supply their own food below market prices. They're still going to sell, but they're going to sell for half of what you would have to get at the grocery store. A lot of them don't even have grocery stores nearby. So that might be the de facto grocery store and future farmers market. So we're doing that with the city. And then we also, our farm right now, we have, we're selling to the largest grocer in the United States called Kroger. And so we're in 16 of their locations. We have to be in 50 by the end of the year. But they're also starting to rethink their model, because in the original model, they had contracts with farms all over. California, Arizona, those groups are now being curtailed because of water. So now they have to go to Mexico and Chile and Argentina and all these other, and that's way further.
Yeah.
So, and then they have their own farms in the States. But even if their own farms in Ohio, it's 2,400-mile round trip to get a container, drive it to Houston, unload the product, and then drive back to refill it. So it's 2,400 miles. And we said, if you need 1,000 lettuce and 1,000 basil a day, we'll give you 1,000 lettuce, 1,000 basil. If you need 10,000 a day and 10,000 basil, we'll give you 10,000. So they're now rethinking their model. They said, whoa, wait a second. Maybe we need to look at regional or city farms, because that's where 95% of their demand is.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening right now in the US. That transition is starting to occur.
Super. So actually, in a way, retailers in US actually recognize this as an opportunity, and they start to play with it. Because actually, with in my terms, how I see it from economical and business process side, with this short food supply chain, direct connection with the farmers and the consumers, we actually do not need this such a big boxes which are just energy inefficient and selling bad food, So I think this is, states are here much cleverer in a way, I will say, but much more pragmatic to solving the problems than we are in the Europe. But because maybe you are the one system, and here in Europe we have a lot of system with a lot of cultures, so it's super. And actually, in a way, it lead me to another thing, because I used to say they always, this farm to table or farm to fork concept. And me, as somebody who is actually into the information science, holding PhD in information science, I was actually looking it from another side, because I didn't follow the goods, I followed the information. And even I say, your refrigerator knows better what you need and consume than yourself.
Yeah.
And then actually I turned this model. So instead of farm to table, to the model table to farm. Because if you want to predict, if you want to understand, then actually you could reduce the waste. Do you see this? Because actually, if you know how many salads or herbs or microgreens you will sell, actually you could plan your production. You do not have leftovers. You have optimized the processes,
right,
and everything. How this concept of the retailers doing this controlled environment agriculture, do they fit into it, or are they getting this concept?
They're working on that, but they're not really doing anything just yet. I think right now their paradigm shift is they're starting to rethink just outsourcing these different supplies. So normally, let's say they need romaine lettuce or these special tomatoes, they might have 3 or 4 key suppliers, but those distances are growing. So now they're having to rethink having a more stable supply, and especially with COVID and supply chain, the cost for transportation going up so much.
Yeah.
So that's where their key focus in. Hey, we're losing money. What can we do to shorten that supply chain?
Yeah.
So that's their key focus right now, is shortening the supply chain. And now all of a sudden, local and regional farms are becoming very attractive. Whereas before, they would go to mega farms in California, mega farms in Arizona, mega farms in Mexico. And they're still doing that. But now they're starting to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't put all our eggs in that basket. Maybe we need to focus on another reliable supply that's closer to where the market is. So just-in-time demand is getting there. That's what I think.
Like in the car industry, so they're getting in the actually logistics and everything.
And we're talking to some distributors now who said, "Can you build a facility right next to our distribution center?" So that's what's going to happen. And I made a prediction to my colleagues at the city of Houston and to NASA and elsewhere. I said, by 2030, every major city, that's my personal prediction, by 2030, every major city will have to do sustainable city farming, whether it's greenhouse or warehouse, they will have to do it because it just solves so many problems.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it just solves it. Yeah.
And actually, how I look on it, even now in Croatia, they opened the one factory. They extracting the proteins from the beans.
Mhm.
Also, so actually, you have you could find a lot of proteins in some, I will say, low warehousing cost, because beans do not need to be frozen. They don't need, so actually don't need much of the energy and capital resources to store those products, especially now with advanced ozone and UV machines, which keep the let's say air in those warehouses clean, and actually combining them with the freshly produced greenery from the vertical or farms, or the or on the greenhouses. I think then combining those two could be really good solutions, because also meat as it is. Personally, I like to eat meat, but it's up to everybody. But actually, meat consume a lot of resources. It was a recent paper published by the Oxford University, and actually, I found that they, for the 100 grams of proteins, you need 560 square meters of the land.
That's correct. And by the way, that's another thing we're talking to some groups about. The there is a very good point about fodder systems that can be also placed next to these cattle farms.
Yeah.
So you can greatly minimize the amount that's needed. The problem is hay is really cheap.
Yeah.
And but the costs are going up every year because there's less hay to be had, and they're having to import it.
Yeah, but it's I will we now just start to do some as my colleague and partner in the company, Ivana, I'm working with. She is also the teacher, and she's riding the horses. And actually, one of her good colleagues, she's from the veterinary university here in Zagreb. And actually, we start to look that actually, okay, hay is cheap, but sometimes you need some percentage of the fresh and wet food for the animals. Mm-hmm. And then I read some scientific papers which are actually tried to show that actually if you gave them fresh fodder, they do not give so much milk. But then actually, I think my father is veterinary, and actually I read a little bit and that discuss with him. But of course, because actually by feeding them with the dry food, they extracted the more milk with them. So it's the less natural milk from them. So I think it will be very, very interesting to see what will happen. And again, I think it's the similar, like use the cheap beans and expensive microgreens and do the very good mix of the food. Same could be good for the animals too.
Yeah, we were several years ago. We were contacted by a group in Italy and near Parma, and they were having to import hay from Germany because their land was so dry that they couldn't grow grass.
Yeah.
But their explanation was they need fodder and grass to actually increase milk production. They said it was like a 20 to 25% increase in milk production with fresh fodder or fresh grass. Some of it is water content, chlorophyll, some other things. But they needed that and they didn't have it. So they were having to just import hay, which was crazy. But they had no rain and the whole area was just super dry. And they had to slaughter the animals.
Yeah, but this is also happening now on Mediterranean country. Croatia is on Mediterranean, and we have like this summer was every year was more and more.
Yeah.
And then even in some countries in the Europe, I talked with some of our partners who are more active into the German market. And actually, what is happening there as retail stores want to have everybody insured. So actually, they have producer insured, logistics, distributor, and the shop. Everybody has to pay insurance.
Yeah.
And then actually now, because of these changes in the weather and storms and everything, the insurance went so high that actually it's not viable to grow food on standard ways.
Wow. Yeah.
So actually it pushing them. And for example, we now in Europe, we have a lot of old buildings which are unused, which are 200-300 years old. And actually they could still be put in the use with little bit of technology into the food production factories.
Yes.
You know? So they're looking for these vertical systems. They look for the, even now we were in the Green Tech in Amsterdam. I come to the new, measure of the evaluation, not cost per meter, but most cost per cube meter.
Yeah.
So actually, if you do these food boxes or food factories, how you call them, seeds come at one side, foods, how much cost this per square meter, and how actually you could reduce the cost. And actually, this lead me to the one following question, which I put and wanted to ask you. I saw in your farm, you do only one level hydroponics, if I'm correct.
That is correct, but that was our baseline. When we began in 2016, we were doing vertical farming in 12-foot rack systems, mostly flood and drain, in a 1,200 square foot grow room. You need scale in order to be economical and to have a viable business. So we were mostly vetting technology. We were vetting what was out there. And honestly, I found 90% of it to just be not adequate. So after that, we just said, okay, we have to do our own thing. So we built the greenhouse using conventional NFT technology, also to learn more. And so we formed a triangle. The triangle is controlled environment agriculture. Over here is nutrient delivery and pumping systems. And over here is tower or table monitoring systems. So when we looked at the triangle, we said, this is good, but it's not great. Controlled environment, monitoring, control, greenhouse, etc. It's good, not great. I give it a B minus. Over here, I looked at nutrient delivery, and I looked at the hardware, control, software. I gave the hardware a B minus. I gave the software an F. It was terrible software.
Yeah.
And then I looked over here, and there was nothing. There's nothing. I talked to my colleagues in the U.S., American Hydroponics, Hort America, some of these other words. There's nothing there. So we've had to build it all. We're building all three. And so the future is vertical. We're using NFT, but we're building, my colleagues from NASA and from A&M are coming next week because we're building our first towers. And these towers are NFT towers. And we're building them, and we have our own hardware. We have our own software. We're completing that triangle. So then we're going to retrofit our greenhouses. And we also have a warehouse where we're going to apply both of them. Obviously, your operational costs will be lower in the greenhouse because of electricity demand. But the warehouse, it'll work in either application. We want something that's adaptable to any application. And it's also adaptable to a variety of crops. If we want to do root crops, if we want to do berries, if we want to do leafy greens that are herbs, all that is. So we're doing it now in a small prototype, but now we need to build a large commercial system. So yes, the future, in my opinion, will be vertical. And even with us, we could go from doing 1,000 heads of lettuce to 6,000, 10,000 very quickly per day.
Yeah.
So that's where we're headed. But Sergej, the other thing too is the three largest costs that we found was labor, electricity, and water. So for our production, those are the key things we focused on. How do we reduce the cost of labor, electricity, and water? So everything that we've looked at, this system has been focused on reducing that. And that way, your cost per square meter or cubic meter is now it's very economical to do it in any setting. So that's been our focus over the last 6 years.
Yeah, I completely agree with you because our systems, how we on our farm, what we used, actually we tried a lot of different things, spent so much money in it, developed the IoT solutions, softwares, everything, but at the end, what we like to say for our system, they're very simple, and we say build from farmers for farmers.
Yeah.
Of course, it's so super nice to have expensive technology, but the question is, do you need it? I think we as a sharing experience in SAP is expensive software, but it's not for every company. So I think that this is the way to do. And here in Croatia, we have some customer actually who now integrating the vertical farming into their processes. And this is where I see very good future, like the seedlings development. You could actually optimize the sowing, because if you have different varieties, some are slower, some is faster, you could actually prepare them when they go to the field or into the glass houses, so you could use different varieties at the same time. And I agree completely with you that there is a lot of space for improve, because some prices what we saw in now in Amsterdam, like 2,000 euro per cube meter, it's way too much. You could not. I don't know what you have to grow in 1 cubic meter for this. And but technology exists there, and and actually now I will put the one tricky question maybe, but I could see that we share thoughts, so I'm really free to ask. Because now everybody talking about the aeroponics.
Yeah.
Okay. But when I talk with my colleagues actually for civil engineering or like proper engineers who understand what the pressure, what the system performances is, risk and everything, and actually they are not from the farming industry, they actually say to me this is not sustainable, because you have the system all the time under high pressure. And what's your opinion on aeroponics?
I'll tell you, we vetted a lot of technologies, and we looked at a lot of systems, and a high level overview. We tested aquaponics. Did not like it. Too complicated, too many moving parts just to get produce.
Yep.
It did not make economic sense to do that. We looked at aeroponics. Very clever on a small scale. Commercial, forget it. There was too many problems with the filters always getting plugged because of the water and the nutrients. They will plug. The pressure balance, the evening out. There was just as you scale, it becomes, instead of one problem, it's 100. Now it's 1,000. And so the maintenance was just crazy. And we calculated on a small scale. It's like, well, we're having this much. Imagine if we were doing 10 or 20 or 100 times more. It would not make sense. So not a big fan of that. Flood and drain is great for some applications. And we looked at everything, but we really liked NFT and modified. We call it modified NFT. We made some changes.
But with the NFT now we're working here with the one colleague from Czech Republic, And actually all about with the NFT, it should be developed in terms of physically. So it's the actually how you design that water flows fast. And
Correct.
if the water flows fast, then actually nutrients are distributed evenly and the plants enjoy their life. And they actually, so instead of having hard pressure, you just need to little bit do the MATLAB calculation and to see how the channels could be deep. So actually you receive, and I'm not sure, did you heard about the SAF systems, shallow ebb and flow systems, which is kind of mixture of the ebb and flow NFT, and it's very good for the aeration of the roots, because actually the most important thing, at least I'm not agronomist, but I employ and work closely only with agronomes, and they told me that actually the most important thing for plant is air. So actually if you have the right amount of air in the water, or actually even sometimes you could just drain the water so the roots get the drain, you get super results.
Yes, I totally agree with that. We had to modify the existing the traditional NFT system to also increase the amount of air, and we've grown about 60 different crops in our NFT. Yeah, see, we've grown tomatoes, we've grown cucumbers, we've grown edible flowers like crazy, we've grown every single herb you can imagine, we've grown spinach, kale, chard, 20 varieties of lettuce. Before COVID, it was like a crazy paradise. We were just growing everything, and the tomatoes were growing crazy. So so we had to modify our NFT system to do that, to grow, and people thought we were nuts because we had so many different types of crops growing in there. We had marigolds and violas and borage and nasturtium, but there was a way to do it. But I agree with your colleague. Oxygen was a very important part of that mix.
Yeah, I know. I found the one technology. It was developed with the colleagues from Slovenia, and they used actually nanotechnology to ingest under the high pressure. They ingest the more air into the water, and when you do the irrigation with those water, like results, what they get was 20% in the harvest. So actually, instead of having hundreds of multiply sprayers, you just have the one into the water, and which is cleverly distributed into it. And and I'm glad that you say that we grow everything, and for every different things, even sometimes for example, I liked moringa a lot because it's for me, this is one of my favorite, like how to say, food supplement. And even we grow moringa and put them in the stems, and we give it away to the people. So actually now, even with the one project, we are working in the indoor, we are growing oaks. So actually they perform very well in the terms of seedling. They could grow much faster, and you could have them able to move them into the urban spaces. So actually in quite small few containers, you could grow quite a lot of trees, which could you spread around in it. So look, we're coming. It was really, I'm happy that we went into really deep things, but this is the beauty of it. And actually, this is my interest in. For me personally, why I get into this business. When I was doing my MBA in London, one of the last sentences was, will Tesco become a refrigerator will become competitor to the Tesco, because refrigerator knows what you eat. We already discussed. But then in 2015, as I really like. I found a very good book. Actually, it was financed by Pentagon, but it was like ultra large systems. And they talk, and then I say, okay, how YouTube for food would look like, you know? So actually, the music is free, artists are still making money, and everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And actually, then I a little bit moved my paradigm from the information system design into the food system design, and I come out that actually we throw away half of the food. So actually, if we will have the good information system, as you say in this triangle, so data are extremely important, and if we could share the data and connect the dots with the good data engineering practices, we could have amazing results and food free for all, or not for all, or somebody who is in need. Because when I used to work on the university, we implemented the ERP for the Red Cross Zagreb. So actually, I learned how these food banks work and everything. And what's your opinion? How actually our way of doing could contribute it to the better living environment and actually have accessible food for that?
No, I think that's another reason why I say by 2030, every major city has to be doing vertical farming and or sustainable city farming. And I don't think it's going to be outdoor community gardens, because there's too many issues with rain and winter and freezing and droughts and all that. A key focus, for example, right now we're working with several schools in Houston. These schools also are in the food deserts, and the students are completely absorbed in this. Some of them are everything that they grow at the end of each month, they donate it to the other children in their school. So now they're like, wow, this quality is so much better than what I get at the grocery store, or there may not be a grocery store. So that's the trend that I'm seeing, is these schools are saying, especially the younger students are saying, hey, why don't we just grow our own and we don't have to wait for it. We don't have to look for it. It's just here. So that's what I'm seeing is going to be where a lot of the adoption occurs. That's been our number one focus over the last 6 months, is getting that. So we should be delivering the first greenhouses to these schools in the next, but it has our systems in it, because we want it to be very easy to grow, it's like a platform, very easy to understand and use. And so the children, the students will say, hey, if I leave the school, I want to build my own because I really like doing this. It might be a hobby. There might be a small business. It might be a large business. We don't know. But I think that's where the trend is going to be. And also the cities looking for more food security and resilience. I think those are going to be the key things that are going to happen.
So actually adoption of the cities and starting it from the school level.
Correct.
This should be conclusion.
Correct. Yeah, and we're doing that now with both the city, directly with the city for greenhouses, but also with the schools. We were shocked. The schools came to us. Yeah. We didn't go to the schools. They all came to us. So that told us, well, we never expected that. Yeah. But that's what we're doing right now.
Super amazing. I think it's very aligned what we do here, but we will left it for offline and afterward discussion. I would really like to thank you very much for this very insightful, inspirative, and actually kind of communication, which gave me kind of even more motivation that what we are doing, we are on the right direction, and there are people in the world who think that food could be grown in the moon, at the moon.
And that's why by the way, that's why our name is MoonFlower. Yeah. Because when we met with our NASA colleagues in 2015, and I was thinking about going into this industry, I was doing my research. My wife is the one who says, "Wow, if you're gonna help them put flowers on the moon, why don't you just call them MoonFlower?"
Yeah.
So that's why the name. That's why we named our company MoonFlower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Federico, and stay in touch and let future bring us a lot of new, better, and cheaper technology, which will be accessible to all and produce the more food for all.
Absolutely. We're in the same mission. Thank you, Sergej.
Thank you, Federico. Ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye.